Hey, I'm Raina.
And I'm Drew.
We are so excited to welcome you to our channel where we're going to be giving you reactions right out of the movie theater. We're best friends. We see a lot of movies, Drew.
We do.
How many movies do you think we frequently see?
One every couple of weeks, the last couple of years.
Yeah. I'd say like at least once every 2 weeks, sometimes every week.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a horror movie today. What movie are we seeing?
We are going to see The Monkey, which is the new movie based on the Stephen King short story written in 1980 in Skeleton Crew. I read it preparing for this movie. It's about 30 pages long. It's actually kind of dry and doesn't have a lot of violence in the story, which apparently this movie is going the opposite direction and is quite splattery, I hear.
Oh, so splattery. So Drew and I really do enjoy horror movies. However, sometimes we watch them like this. Yeah. And Drew always has this funny thing that happens where he gets into a horror movie and sometimes your tummy growls. Yeah.
It's the A&W I eat before we go to movies.
A&W should sponsor us. Speaking of sponsorship, I do want to acknowledge that Elevation Pictures gave us these tickets for free. So thank you so much. And we are very big fans of Cineclub at Cineplex.
Yes.
We get a lot of discounts because of it. Not sponsored saying this, just telling you as Canadians it's a good deal. So going into this movie, Drew, I haven't read the book, you have, but just based off the trailers and what I'm seeing, Osgood Perkins is being promoted a lot. And yes. What would our viewers know him from? So he's done a couple of films, but the one that everyone, or most everyone I should say, would know him from was Longlegs from last year. Longlegs, yes. Which I liked. I didn't love as much as I hoped I might love, but the trailer for this looks like it'll be a lot of crazy fun. So. I think so, and I really like the cast in here. We have a really quirky cast, but I am curious how they're going to adapt something that is 30 pages into 2-hour movie. I
think it's only 90 minutes.
Is it 90 minutes?
Yeah.
An hour and a half? So rule of thumb, usually 1 minute per page in a book. Yeah. So that's like 30 minutes of content. This should be interesting. But truthfully, not a whole lot happens in the short story, so I'm expecting this to be on a much grander scale than the book. Yeah, I think it should be interesting. It just recently opened. We kind of have most of the theater to ourselves. We're going on a weeknight. We do that on purpose. I get really mad if people talk, so we do that on purpose. But yeah, I think we're going to head in. We're going to grab our popcorn, and we're going to let you know our first impressions right out of the theater, so stay tuned. Okay, well, that was not what I was expecting. That was bonkers, ridiculous. Yeah. Like, I went into that blind. I didn't read the book. I only saw the trailers. I knew that there was going to be, like, blood and maybe, like, some potential ridiculous deaths or something. But, like, this was, like, Final Destination meets Goosebumps for adults. Sprinkle in a little bit of South Park, yeah. Happy Tree Friends. Yeah. And I found that the dialogue to me felt a bit like SNL, like very deadpan delivery, but in like a funny way. Were you expecting this to be as much of a comedy? Only because I had read some of the other reviews, but the amount of like just camp silliness that it leaned into, I expected to maybe play it a little bit more straight than it did. Yeah, it was very off kilter, and in the theater you made a really good comparison. There's this show that we have in Canada that used to air on YTV, which was like children's programming, youth TV. It was called Freaky Stories, and it was always, this is a true story. Yeah. It happened to a friend of mine, and it was always this sort of semi-believable story that was a bit surreal. Like,
well, they were always based on real urban legends.
Urban legends,
but then they would do it in like this very stylized, like cartoon retelling of these famous urban legends, and like very exaggerated character designs, and like very silly and tongue-in-cheek in tone. And that's why it reminded me of Freaky Stories, because I was like, is the cockroach telling the story?
Yes, it felt like Freaky Stories for adults.
Yeah.
Like it just felt a bit off kilter, like in a good way. I was really surprised at all the cast that were in it. Again, I went in blind, so I only really noticed who was in the trailer. And then I'm like, oh, it's She-Hulk. Oh, it's Mark S. from Severance. Like it's Frodo Baggins.
And the main characters are twins, which the movie follows them when they're children and when they're adults. And for both settings, they're played by the same actor with like slightly different costumes and appearances.
And you were telling me that the Stephen King story was written in the 80s.
It was published in 1980. I don't know when he wrote it.
Okay, so it was published
early King.
So it definitely had elements of like maybe King was under a bit of influence writing that story, and they took inspiration from that with
Well,
this
it also
movie.
had a lot of like troubled father trying to connect with his son, kind of similar themes to The Shining, and Stephen King was working through a lot of stuff about his parenting style and his own demons, and it felt a little like just got a tiny little bit of Jack Torrance in his character.
Yeah.
Obviously, it ends differently for them than it did in The Shining, but it reminded me of those themes.
There were Easter eggs. There were Stephen King Easter eggs. So, like, if you're a fan of, like, Stephen King's universe, there were Easter eggs, but they were done in, like, a parody way.
Yeah. There's one classic King character who's actually name-dropped, first and last name. I won't spoil. This is spoiler-free, obviously. But when they said this character's name, I was like, is that just a reference, or is that supposed to be the character from that story? And I still don't know what the intention was there, but
so the whole idea of the monkey is it's kind of like this cursed object, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, somebody called the Warrens. Like, where's Ed and Lorraine?
Yeah.
Like, they dealt with Annabelle. Surely they could deal with this. And I kind of felt like this movie was a bit parodying those movies a little bit. Like,
and it sort of reminded me of that classic Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode
the
with the killer, Krusty the Clown doll.
Oh, yes.
Remember, this doll carries a terrible curse?
Yes. Okay, so I didn't think of that. I was thinking of the monkey paw.
Yeah.
And where Buddy's like, but it comes with Frogurt.
Yeah.
But the Frogurt is poison. but you get your choice of topping. The topping is poison.
Yeah.
It was like evil Elf on a Shelf. Actually, I think Elf on a Shelf is already evil.
Yeah.
But it was like kind of like Elf on a Shelf or Coraline, like the doll or something, if you've seen that movie.
Great design on the monkey itself. I know that it's based on a real classic children's toy, but still, the slight changes that they did, like with the lips and the size of it, the monkey was actually a lot physically bigger than I expected it to be, so that was a neat change as well.
And in the credits, it was a puppet. Like, there were puppeteers managing it. It does this teeth thing. It was like, they'd like turn it
and somehow they made it look angrier at certain parts of the movie. Like, was that a different puppet or a different face that they used? And anyway, it was interesting how they used the design of it.
So the book was published in the 80s, but they jumped the time, and it takes place in like
1999
is when
and
it
then
kind of
today.
starts.
Yeah.
And as it follows the brothers, it's a bit in the early 2000s.
So you get to enjoy some late 90s fashion in those flashbacks.
Yeah, so we're the age that the characters would be, and there were fun, like, stereotypes like that were kind of parodied from that time that I found really funny. Obviously a lot of like goodwill went into this. Like, the people creating it just wanted to have fun, good time.
Don't expect to be scared.
No, none of it scared
It's a silly movie, and it's not setting out to do that. So it's not like this is a bad horror movie because it's not scary. Like, it's not trying to do that at all.
But what movies would you compare it to for our audience? Like, if they liked other types of movies, do you think? I was kind of thinking like Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving for sure. Renfield.
Oh yeah, Renfield
in terms
vibes.
of the way that some of the violence is presented in that kind of over-the-top kind of way. It is not Final Destination. It is not Saw. The way that it presents its violence is very different than those movies.
We're seeing more of this kind of horror comedy genre. Like, we just saw Heart Eyes, which we didn't get to review in time to launch our channel, but we did see Heart Eyes, and that was kind of horror comedy, rom-com.
A romantic comedy with a slasher in it.
Yeah. And Thanksgiving was also very high-level parody and funny and stuff like that.
I'd say Thanksgiving was more seriously violent than this, though. Yeah.
It also reminds me, being of the age that we are, of like the scary movies, the scary movie movies, you know, from back in the day, where they would parody all of the pop culture things at the moment. So this isn't really parodying current pop culture, but it is, like, to a degree, it's just parodying lots of ridiculous tropes.
And there was one twist towards the end that is not in the original short story, so I was not expecting that at all. And then the tone of the ending, I thought, was very interesting. And I'm not sure, I don't want to get into spoilers, but I'm not sure to what extent they were trying to communicate, like, how big did this end up being, right? It seems kind of ambiguous at the end.
Drew and I may do follow-up videos depending on how well these initial videos are received. We'll kind of put feelers out, and if the audience is interested, we might do follow-up videos when stuff goes to VOD, video on demand. And then we can do spoiler reviews where we get into, like, more specifics, and, like, you can tell us what you thought and everything. But, like, for me, I definitely would see it in theater. It was a fun theater movie.
Well, it's fun. Our screening was actually quite well sold, and it was fun to hear, like, other people laughing at the funny parts, right?
Yeah, they said at the beginning, they show a clip of the actors being interviewed, and they say at the beginning that people are laughing so hard that they're missing some of the follow-up jokes because they're laughing over the jokes. And I did find that happen a few times. Like, I caught people were still laughing when it was time for another joke, and we were trying to catch it. So very funny. The cast were all great.
Theo James.
So Theo James narrates it as well.
Yeah.
I'd listen to him read the phone book. Like, he was very good narrator.
I noticed that in the trailers they put some of his narration in, and he's got a good voice for that.
He's got a good voice for that. I wonder if he reads, like, audiobooks, because I would, like, listen to him. But yeah, like, I really thought it was fun. If you like this kind of thing, you'll probably love it. If you get annoyed by this kind of thing, you'll probably hate it.
If you're going in expecting an actual, like, scary movie, you can get, like, super attached to the characters, and, like, you're worried about what's going to happen. It's not that. It's a very stylized, very over the top, very cartoony, but I still enjoyed it a lot.
Slapstick. It was really slapstick. By the end of it, I was able to predict some of the deaths that were going to happen because it kind of followed a formula. But it was fun. Like, it's fun. Not everything has to be, like, Avengers level, you know, a threat. And
whereas
also,
whereas the deaths in the short story were very, like, realistic, down to earth. This is really something that could just happen to people. These were very stylized, very ridiculous. Some of the deaths even remind me of Kenny from South Park. And there was a bit of Final Destination in there. I feel like there were some callbacks. Anyway, I laughed so hard that I was rubbing my eye because I was starting to tear up, and I took off part of my fake eyelash. So I'm, like, in the theater with my fake eyelash, like, hanging off. Is that what you were doing? It was like, I saw in motion. I was like, what is she doing?
I was trying to, like, put it back on because it was so good. But how would you, initial impression? Okay, so sometimes when we think about it more, our opinions grow or change, but initial, like, out of 10, how would you put it?
I'm hovering between 7 and 8. I gave in my own mind, we obviously didn't do a video for it, but I gave Hard Eyes a 7, and it feels wrong to give this the same rating as that, because I would say I enjoyed this a little bit more than Hard Eyes. So I'm going to give it, like, let's go 7.5.
I feel on par with that, 7.5. However, I do really feel it is worth it to watch it in a theater. Some of these, when I rate them, I will tell you, Drew will tell you if it's like, you know what, save it for streaming. But this one, definitely, the audience reaction was part of what made it fun. So go with your friends, go with a group, go on a busy time.
And it's nice to go and see something where you don't have to worry, are there going to be a bunch of, like, people talking and ruining the atmosphere? Basically it's a carnival. This movie is a carnival. So if your audience is loud as it's not going to ruin your experience. In fact, like, the more raucous your audience is, the better time.
Which happened when we saw Thanksgiving as well. People were really laughing. One thing Drew and I noticed that I will share is we read several articles so we're seeing this the night before it officially comes out. It's February 20th here, and it officially comes out on the 21st. But we did see articles that said there was a post-credit scene.
Yeah.
So we waited till the end. And
we were the only ones left. We were the only ones waiting for this. There was a Cineplex guy in cleaning up people's popcorn and stuff. We're sitting there waiting patiently. Nothing. So I don't know. Time will tell if other people get it. Maybe it was just our theater. Maybe it's an American thing. Yeah.
Like,
Could
I don't
be like
know.
there's nothing in Actually, that's happened before. So do you remember the movie X?
Mm-hmm.
So they kept saying at the post credits of X, you would get the trailer for Pearl, the follow up. So when I saw X here, I, similar to tonight, sat there through the credits. I was the only one left. No Pearl trailer. So I don't know if maybe some of these things are like a US only thing and they're not bothering here, but I don't want to tell you not to stay for the post credits in case they add it later, but
I guess just be aware that it might not be there. I don't know, or maybe because we're seeing it early, it's not ready. I don't know, but I'm going to go home and look up the articles and see what it is. But yeah, The Monkey, solid, silly, fun, crazy, slapstick. Gore was not bad at all. The gore was silly gore. It was silly gore. I felt like the actors, some of them felt like a cameo. Like it was fun seeing Elijah Woods and everything. Like that was just a fun cameo. But anyway, if you like what you're hearing from us, please let us know in the comments. What movie do you think Drew and I should see next? What kind of things do you like to hear in reviews? And hey, have you seen The Monkey? Leave us a comment down below. Please like and subscribe.
Bye.